Since 2009, Halo has had a variety of guide and encyclopedia-style books, each with its own sum of new and repeat information. Last week we got the latest Halo guidebook in the form of the official Spartan Field Manual, a book that in many ways lives up to the legacy of Halo guides, both the good and the bad. Though mostly good, I'm happy to say. Quick disclaimer, I was given a free copy of the Field Manual by 343, so keep that in mind when I give my final thoughts. The Halo official Spartan Field Manual is the first release in a new partnership between 343 Industries and Scholastic Books, with an aim at a slightly younger audience than Halo normally goes for. When this book was first discovered, there were a considerable number of people that immediately rolled their eyes, to put it mildly, and a few that wrote it off entirely, which is genuinely unfortunate since the book is pretty good overall. Yes, it's aimed at teens and young adults, but that doesn't mean that its quality is diminished or that Halo in general is going to aim entirely at younger people. It's just one of the many avenues 343 has to grow the Halo franchise. Honestly, action figures and mega constructs are much more quote-unquote kid-friendly if you want to get into it, but I digress. I'll admit, for as open-minded as I was, I can't say I was expecting much from this guide. I figured I'd pick it up just to have it in my collection. I'm a collector at heart with a drive to own anything Halo, really, so yeah. But what we got from this guide is more than I personally expected. The official Spartan Field Manual is a great introduction to the Halo universe, but also a consolidation of a ton of disparate lore, alongside some new lore and info presented as an in-universe briefing book to newly minted Spartan 4s. I've made clear my love of books that have an in-universe presence, so this immediately made the Field Manual that much more attractive, and overall it works pretty well, as you'll see. While I can't cover everything this book covers here, it would literally take hours, I'd like to hit some of the highlights. As noted, this book is an in-universe manual, and is being distributed to an unnamed Spartan 4 recruit just prior to the Battle of Kamchatka that opened Halo 5. As it turns out, while Osiris was rescuing Halsey and triggering the entire Halo community, a second attack force would be deployed, which the owner of this manual would participate in. Interestingly, the Spartan would report to Spartan Miller. Turns out that Spartan mission handlers oversee multiple Spartan fire teams, and they fought alongside Fireteam Majestic on Passage during a previous mission. The book opens with introductions from Commander Sarah Palmer, Captain Thomas Lasky, and Spartans Gabriel Thorne and Tedra Grant, the latter two providing extra commentary throughout the book. Now, as this is the Spartan Field Manual, the big stuff is all about Spartans. Notably, this book covers all Spartan and Super Soldier programs going back to the now dubbed Project Orion Phase 1. If you don't know, that's the first UNSC-sponsored Super Soldier program that ran from 2315 to 2325. The book then, of course, goes on to cover the Project Orion that augmented volunteers from various UNSC branches, including Sergeant Major Avery Johnson, and the Spartan 2, 3, and 4 programs. It adds a lot of detail to each, including project sponsors, project leads, and more. With the project sponsor, this basically breaks down to the section of the UNSC that's sponsoring and what I can only call an alternative project name. For example, Spartan 3's sponsor is UEG, UNSC, Navy, ONI, Section 3, Chrysanthemum. That last part should sound familiar if you've read Ghosts of Onyx, as Project Chrysanthemum was the codename for the Spartan 3 Augmentation Initiative. One could then extrapolate the last part of each project sponsor for the other programs, which I'll share in a minute, also relates to their respective augmentation initiatives. And as I said, this book has project leads, Colonel Ackerson being the lead for Spartan 3. Orion Phase 1's project sponsor was UEG Colonial Military Administration, Kyklos, running from 2315 to 2325, and the project lead was Dr. Ritza Shepard. Orion Phase 2, later rebranded as Spartan 1, was UEG, UNSC, Navy, ONI, Section 3, Iris. It ran from 2491 to 2506, and the project lead was Rear Admiral Pranav Sabanis. Spartan 2 was UEG, UNSC, Navy, ONI, Section 3 Aster, ran from 2513 to present, and was headed by Dr. Catherine Halsey. Project start dates seem to go back to when the project is formally proposed, 2513 being the year that Halsey settled on her project name and the parameters, so that fits. Anyway, we've already covered Spartan 3's, leaving just the Spartan 4 project. The project sponsor is UEG, UNSC, Navy, ONI, Section 3, Orchid. The project lead, Rear Admiral Musa Ghanem, aka Musa 096, and the project, surprise surprise, was started in 2550. As it turns out, the Spartan 4 program actually started as a way to slightly augment Oni personnel, hence the 2550 start date. Along with that, each project includes new, deeper information, such as the fact that the Battle of Jericho in 2535 marked the last time the UNSC would use Spartans on the ground after losing orbital superiority. Called Operation Fallen Walls, the end of this operation was detailed in the introduction for Halo: The Fall of Reach. There are other details such as Spartan 3 training and education having a pure military focus, whereas Orion candidates and Spartan 2s also received supplemental general education and skill development that lacked immediate military application. The book also, interestingly, notes that the augmentation success rate for Alpha Company was 60%, a seeming departure from Ghosts of Onyx's claim of a 100% success rate. However, conversations on Reddit have led me to think that the 60% success rate is something of an Oni cover-up, in reality referring to the number of candidates that were actually augmented. Alpha Company started with 497 candidates, but only 300 were augmented. 60% of 497 comes to 298, just shy of 300, so the theory definitely works. The book even goes on to say that the augmentation success rate went up to 100% by 2552, and Gamma Company, augmented in 52, augmented all 330 of its initial trainees. Ultimately though, we'll have to wait and see if this theory turns out to be true. And now, though it pains me, we have to move on if you want to hear anything else, as I could talk for quite a while on what has essentially just been about 10 or so pages. Yeah, let that sink in. Anyway, as the manual is written for our new Spartan 4, it essentially works as propaganda and is full of historical revisionism if that hasn't been obvious at this point. And of course, the majority of this propaganda all centers around Master Chief. Throughout the book, the Chief is played up as the hero of humanity, which isn't all that new if you're familiar with any Halo marketing material. However, with the advent of the Spartan 4 program, the Chief has been transformed into a mythological figure, and it's interesting to see how the UNSC uses that for recruitment. Chief gets about 5 pages dedicated just to him, while any other Spartan, regardless of class, gets 1, if that. Generally, Chief appears in his Halo 5 armor, but one thing that really stood out and brought a smile to my face is the heavy use of Mark IV imagery. You have a render of Mark IV from Halo 5 as the cover, the Mark IV schematic from Mythos is used in a recruitment poster featured in the book, and the Halo Wars 2 render of Jerome, though likely here meant to just be a generic Spartan, is used a number of times. Mark IV in-universe was the longest running armor, and even though it came in many forms and variants, it assuredly would have become the armor most associated with Spartans in-universe. The Spartan 2 program was made public in 2547 to boost morale, well after Mark IV had been standardized, and I can definitely imagine Oni using the baseline model in their propaganda. Hell, according to Halo 5's description of the Mark IV helmet, a battered Mark IV helmet once worn by Master Chief is the last thing Spartan 4 candidates see before they start their evaluation and preliminary augmentation cycle, which fits perfectly with the narrative the field manual pushes. Simply put, I love how much this book plays up Mark IV and John 117 for propaganda purposes. Moving on once again, let's hit some other highlights. The book notes what each Spartan role, Spartan Fireteam Leader, Handler, etc., equivocates to within the UNSC at large, along with basic responsibilities. It dives into the role each branch of the UNSC plays and how Spartans figure into all that. It notes that Spartan 4s can run up to 40 kilometers per hour and survive up to 5 minutes in the vacuum of space unarmored. Notably, Kelly 087 has been noted of running upwards of 65 kilometers per hour in Gen 2. Rehabilitated Spartan 2s, aka the washouts, were deployed between 2526 and 2530. When a Spartan 4 is infected by the Flood and all other safeguards fail, Cryptonym Corruptor is declared and weapons of mass destruction are authorized for immediate use. Hidden Xperia made a great video about this recently. It's also noted that there have actually been a few Flood outbreaks in the years since the war, though they've been quickly and efficiently dealt with by Spartan 4s, hence why you never hear of them. In addition, the book has profiles on notable Spartans like Blue Team, June, Majestic, Osiris, and Palmer, profiles on a few notable planets, profiles on human, Covenant, and Promethean weapons and vehicles, and for all the Covenant lovers, profiles on the various species, ranks for Sangheili and Gerald Hanai, and a look at banished activity. And all of that, which has been about 3 pages in my script now, covers only a fraction of the information in this manual. You can bet I'll be making some videos that dive into topics brought up in here in the weeks and months to come. The last thing I want to cover here before wrapping up is the mention of Generation 3 Mjolnir. Yes, Gen 3 is a thing as of this book. It notes that Gen 3's goals are to, quote, incorporate lessons learned from Generation 2 while also returning to some performance characteristics and higher levels of protection offered by Gen 1. I will bet money right now that we'll be wearing Gen 3 Mjolnir in Halo Infinite, at least in multiplayer, and that it will be the in-universe explanation for design and art direction changes concerning Mjolnir. Calling it now. And on the subject of art, the book largely reuses existing assets from Mythos, renders and screenshots from the games, and concept art. This isn't necessarily bad, mind you, and it works considering the scope and purpose of the manual. This isn't Mythos or Warfleet after all. It does feature some new art, however, and at least one piece of concept art from Halo Infinite. Specifically this piece here. And before anyone in the comments asks, this is a Spartan 4 and it's not a known character. It's just general concept art, nothing specific. So yeah, overall the book has a ton of information and looks great. The information presented is largely repeated from other sources, but some of those sources are so disparate and or hard to find that it's nice to have everything consolidated in a single source. The art present is used beautifully and complements the design of the book. Overall, it feels like something a Spartan 4 would be presented with, albeit in print form rather than a holoscreen or something. That isn't to say, though, that the book is perfect. The cover isn't bad, but doesn't really fit with the internal design of the book, at least in my opinion. I also noticed a number of grammar and other mistakes, such as one sentence saying, those companies that were contracted for Mark V and Mark V. It sucks to see what should be an obvious mistake in a product like this. Mistakes will happen and slip through, it's inevitable, but I feel like I noticed more here than I have in other projects, but who knows. Nevertheless, the final product is absolutely worth the price and is much more than I had initially hoped it could be. I hope this speaks to the minimum quality we can expect from Scholastic projects going forward, and hopefully it only goes up from here. With careful consideration, I can only give the official Spartan Field Manual a 9 out of 10. I sincerely hope this book sells well, so we can see something like it again, Scholastic published or otherwise. Imagine a Covenant guide with deeper information on homeworlds, culture, species variation if appropriate, combat harnesses, ranks, and more. Go in depth with some of the Zealot chapters for the Sangheili, the different skeins for the Gerald Hanai, and more. Or a broader book on UNSC enemies or something, with sections on the various insurrectionist movements alongside Covenant remnants. Point is, I love the field manual and I want more. But those are just my thoughts. If you've purchased it already, what did you think? If you haven't, how do you feel after hearing my review? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching as always, and until next time, this has been Halo Canon. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing, and if you really love me, hit that notification bell and leave a thumbs up. These both really help out the channel. I wouldn't be where I am now without your views and support, so once again, thank you. Keep on being awesome, Canonites.